The top 20 stocks on the ASX have diverged into two groups, the very successful and the biggest losers. Horrendous facts emerge from the Royal Commission into Defence and Veteran Suicide, and the jobs you need to get if you want to become a politician. Welcome to Fear and Greed, daily business news for people who make their own decisions. It is Tuesday, the 10th of September 2024. I'm Michael Thompson, and good morning, Sean Aylmer.
Good morning, Michael.
Sean, the main story this morning, the country's largest listed company, Commonwealth Bank, is now 20% bigger than number two, BHP, with the major banks really cementing their positions as the dominant players on the local market.
A couple of months ago, BHP was easily the biggest company on the bourse, but with Commonwealth Bank up 40% over the past year and BHP down 10%, the Sydney-based bank has now cemented its position at the top of the bourse. Among the top 20 companies, the mega caps, there's broadly been two tiers in terms of performance over the last 52 weeks, the good and the ugly. Westpac has been the top performer of the banks, up 50%, followed by Commonwealth Bank, National Australia Bank, which is up 36%, and ANZ. It's had its own troubles, but it's still up 26% over the past year. Macquarie Group is up more than 30%, as is Wesfarmers. Goodman Group has risen by 44%. WiseTech Global jumped by a massive 83%. These are much, much bigger rises than the overall market. In fact, the S&P ASX200 itself is up just 11%. So you can see how these mega caps have really been outperforming. Offsetting the strong performances, though, have been some very, very ordinary performances, particularly in resources over the past 12 months. Woodside is down 37%. Fortescue Metals is off 16%. BHP is down 10%. Rio's off 4%. I mean, compare that to the banks. Incredible difference between them. CSL is really the only top 20 company moving with the market, rising 10% over the past year or so. Others like Telstra, held by more than 1 million people, million shareholders, and Transurban, they've been flat, while Woolies, another very popular retail stock, has actually gone backwards.
Sean, just to zero in on one that you mentioned WiseTech Global. There's so much talk, so much hype around the tech stocks. Have they been the best performers over the past year, or has that title gone to the banks?
Good question. It's gone to the banks, with the ASX200 bank index up nearly 40% over the year compared to the 30% rise for the all technology index. The resources index is down 16%. It really shows up starkly that if you've been in resources over the 12 months, you've lost out big time. If you've been in banks and technology, you've done pretty well. Now, mostly the resources index has fallen because it reflects fears about the slowdown in the world's two biggest economies, the US and China. There is one notable exception in the resources index: gold stocks. They've done really, really well. Many retail investors play among smaller stocks. We know that. And in that, the news has been bad. The ASX Small Ordinaries Index is up just 4%. It means the valuation gap between large caps and small caps is wide, very, very wide. Now, you could say that suggests there's value in small caps, buying into small caps, but analysts have been saying that for about 2 years now, and it hasn't come to play. So we're certainly not an investing podcast. There is no advice in any of this. If you want to invest, go and see a financial planner. But certainly, if you have invested in small caps and resources over the past 12 months, you've underperformed banks, particularly in tech stocks. You've done pretty well.
Yeah, some big trends there. If we just look specifically at yesterday, Sean, going from the big picture to quite a narrow picture now, how did the local market perform yesterday?
Well, the S&P ASX200 closed down 0.3% to 7,988 points. Consumer discretionary stocks did worst. Property companies did best. Of course, when I have a story like that first story about how well the banks do, on the day, what happens? Yeah, they all fall. Of course they do.
And I suspect it's personal. It is just to embarrass you.
I think so. And Westpac up 50% for the year. Yep, it was the worst performer yesterday, down 1%.
Oh, well played, Westpac.
Yes. REA, Woodside and Wesfarmers were also down at least 1% yesterday. Best on the day among the large caps was WiseTech Global, up 2.3%. A bunch of stocks, including CSL, Hub24, Super Retail Group and Viva Energy, all traded ex-dividend. In M&A news, Charter Hall Retail REIT, Real Estate Investment Trust, has teamed up with super fund Host Plus, so Charter Hall plus Host Plus, to bid for ASX-listed hotel property investments. Charter Hall bought 14.8% of HPI back in March. Yesterday's bid is a premium of around 5% to the previous closing price. There's also been some changes to the makeup of the ASX200. They occur every 3 months. Recently listed Guzman E. Gomez comes into the benchmark S&P ASX 200. That's from September 23. Also joining the top 200 will be Western Australian miner West Gold, which is a gold miner, and coal miner Yancoal. Those dropping out are Domain, Nanosonics, and Strike Energy.
West Gold. That's got to be one of the great names, isn't it?
Yeah.
And especially, you did say Western Australia, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So West
Gold's
ticks
perfect.
every box. I need to sit down.
You are a big fan of Westworld, though.
What, the TV show?
The TV show, yes.
Yeah,
In fact,
isn't that
you're
a cracker?
You're the only person that ever made it past season 1 that I'm aware of, because I think you made it to season 3 or something, didn't you say?
Yes, and then
I said, why'd you give up? And you said, same storyline. I haven't made the first full season.
Oh, the first season is an absolute ripper. It is one of the best shows.
Yeah. Anyway, that's why West Gold, every time I see West Gold, I think of Westworld, and I think of you.
Oh, I just think of the fact that it's a WA miner and they're mining gold. And I'm just like, I just love companies that tell you what they do in the name. And this just
ticks all the boxes.
God,
not
it's
only
a nice one.
Not only what it does, but where it does it.
Oh, I couldn't ask for anything more. So I'm getting way too excited here about this.
Yeah.
You better take us to international markets.
Oil's risen from its multi-year lows, which occurred over the weekend, with Brent crude trading just under $72 a barrel. This week, there's a bunch of prominent organisations expected to release their forecast for oil prices. That'll probably impact the price. Iron ore continues to fall, dropping below $90 a tonne, reflecting lower demand from China. Prices are now down a third this year, weighing on the share price of the local miners. Nice reference there back to the main story, Michael, of course. Also doesn't help the federal budget. Gold's trading just under $2,500 an ounce. The Aussie dollar's fetching 66.7 US cents. In economic news yesterday, China's core inflation fell to its lowest level in more than 3 years, triggering calls for greater stimulus to boost household spending to help achieve Beijing's 5% annual growth target. The CPI, excluding volatile food and energy costs, rose just 0.3% in August, from a year earlier, which is the slowest pace since March 2021.
Sean, you have a great interview coming up after the show today. You are speaking with Kate Dundas, who is the Executive Director of the UN Global Compact Network Australia. This is a fascinating organisation.
Yeah, it sure is. It's part of the UN, and it's basically keeping an eye on how Australian companies are doing in terms of climate change, mandatory climate reporting, how the upcoming federal election will play into it. It's a great chat. I learn a lot from this chat, and I'm the first to admit that this is not my area of expertise. And, when you're doing an interview and you just keep getting corrected, I think I've got a cracking question, and the interviewee says, yes, but, and then corrects me on the question. This happens a couple of times with this interview. So it's great because I'm learning a lot.
Yeah, it is a really good one. And the way the message that I took home from this was that this is the link between the business community and the UN. And it is fascinating kind of where kind of global politics and global policies kind of collide with business and kind of trying to shepherd everyone in the same direction, which would be a massive, massive task.
Herding sheep.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a great chat. All about that is coming up after the show, so stick around for that. Don't miss it. It's a must listen. Sean, we'll be back in a moment with the rest of the day's business news. Sean, more than 3,000 serving military personnel and former veterans died from suicide between 1997 and 2021. The Royal Commission into Defence and Veteran Suicide has found in a scathing report of how military chiefs and the bureaucracy takes care of those who have worn the uniform for Australia.
The 7-volume report made 122 recommendations, including better mental health screening for recruits, reducing the frequency of postings for personnel, and tying performance assessments for senior officers to mental health and gender equality outcomes and management of unacceptable behaviour. According to a report in the Financial Review, the Royal Commission received almost 6,000 submissions, heard from almost 350 witnesses, and prompted then Chief of Defence Force Angus Campbell to apologise for deficiencies in providing care and support for servicemen and women and veterans. Defence Minister Richard Marles tabled the final report yesterday. Earlier in the day, Royal Commission Chair Nick Caldis blamed a failure of leadership in Canberra over the years for failing to heed warnings despite countless recommendations from prior inquiries.
Now, Sean, we talked a lot about the banks earlier in the show, and Westpac will get a new CEO with the boss of business banking, Anthony Miller, taking over the top job in December.
Yeah, the outgoing CEO, Peter King, was supposed to leave the bank 4 years ago, but answered an SOS from then Chair John McFarlane to become CEO for a couple of years. That was after the Austrac scandal resulted in the then CEO, Brian Hartzer, and the Chair, Lindsay Maxted, leaving the bank. So Mr. King stepped up for a couple of years, supposed to be a short-term fix, then COVID hit. In the end, he'll be CEO for close to 5 years. His replacement, Mr. Miller, is a lawyer and investment banker from the inner west of Sydney. Big organisations tend to like internal CEO candidates, and Mr. Miller will take over a much simpler organisation than it was 5 years ago. Westpac sold, BT Funds Management, its general and life insurance businesses, its vendor finance operations. That was the strategy to simplify the bank. It's occurred, so Mr. Miller will take over a more simple bank. His big job, according to analysts, is to simplify Westpac's tech stack. It currently operates about 180 platforms. Now, that's as a result of a bunch of mergers and things like that over the years. Anyway, his sister, I think it was a gold medalist in the women's water polo team in Sydney in 2000. He also had a brother who boxed at the Olympics. So he's got certainly a competitive streak in his family. Anyway, good luck to him.
Goodness me, that's going to be a big job, simplifying the tech stack. 180 platforms.
Yeah, down to 60. And the fact that they got an internal candidate suggests that they're going to keep going with what Peter King has been doing. But wow, 180 to 60, that is a massive job.
Yeah, wouldn't even know where to start. But I suppose that's why I haven't been appointed CEO of Westpac.
Maybe that's a reason.
One of many reasons, I suspect. And now the federal opposition has called for the government to be given powers to force divestitures in the aviation industry, essentially meaning that Canberra could force Qantas to sell Jetstar.
The option is being pushed by the Coalition's transport spokeswoman Bridget McKenzie on the basis that the threat of divestiture could be enough to keep airfares lower than they otherwise would be. She isn't saying the Coalition wants to force the national carrier to sell Jetstar. She just wants the threat there. The federal opposition has taken on quite a few big businesses recently, particularly the retailers. This pushes the strategy into the aviation. Senator McKenzie said Australians want an airline sector where there is genuine choice, where planes take off and land on time, and where luggage arrives at a destination along with the passengers. A very popularist argument, of course, just in time for the next federal election. Now, it got plenty of media play yesterday. Bridget McKenzie was actually writing in the Fin Review. It seems that some of her colleagues didn't know anything about it until they read it in the Fin Review. When Nationals leader David Littleproud was asked about it, he kind of said, the idea needs further study. That's like a stonewall. That's like a what the, apparently it didn't go before the shadow cabinet ahead of her saying it. So, there's probably a few slightly upset people.
What's going on here, Sean? Because at the moment we've got Labor taking on the unions. We've got the Coalition taking on big business. It just feels like all the traditional kind of alliances are just crumbling here.
Yes. Yes, I don't know. I think Peter Dunn has actually said that Labor, that the Coalition, or the Liberals at least, is a friend of business, but not necessarily big business. There was he made a speech earlier in the year which kind of identified the difference, but I totally agree with you. The world is sort of upside down at the moment.
Yeah, certainly is. Now, another sector ramping up ahead of a federal election is mining. And last night, Prime Minister Anthony Albanese told a minerals industry dinner that big Australian companies can still compete globally without reducing wages or lowering safety standards.
Mr. Albanese said that other countries have the same quantities of resources as Australia and have larger populations and people willing to work for less money in more dangerous conditions, but Australian companies don't compete and succeed by copying that model. The big miners, particularly BHP, have been upset at the government's same job, same pay rules, which come into effect on 1 November. They'll force companies to lift pay for workers employed via labour hire firms to match those of the company employees. BHP has been very outspoken on that one. It comes as the Minerals Council of Australia releases a report calling for policies to reverse a 7-year stagnation in mining investment. The policies cover rules or proposed rules around emissions, taxation, governance. No doubt the mining industry, which is really struggling, and we talked about that in the main story, will be a big part of the upcoming election campaign.
Domino's Pizza, Sean, has been hit with a class action alleging misleading or deceptive conduct and breaches of its disclosure obligations regarding the performance of its Japanese stores.
Yeah, so in January this year, Domino's share price tumbled 30% after it released an awful trading update based on the outlook for Asia and Europe. It was the fourth profit downgrade in 3 years, and it looks like shareholders are pretty much fed up with it all, including yesterday's 2% drop. Domino's share price is down 50% this year, and proceedings have been filed by Echo Law on behalf of shareholders who bought into Domino's in the second half of 2021. Now, that was the peak period for Domino's. A Domino's share at the peak was worth more than $160. Today, it's less than $30.
Retailer Solomon Lew has fired the managing director of Smiggle, John Cheston, and accused the longtime executive of, quote, serious misconduct.
So the company didn't outline reasons why Mr. Cheston was immediately terminated, but his exit came as confidential internal documents were leaked to the media. Now, they were either damaging to Myer, the department store chain in which Mr. Lew's Premier Investments is the biggest shareholder, or damaging to Premier Investments, depends how you read it, according to media reports. In a statement, Mr. Lew's Premier Investments said it considers that Mr. Cheston has engaged in serious misconduct and a serious breach of his employment terms, and on that basis, his employment has been terminated. Full stop. Mr. Cheston has already been employed to run ASX-listed fashion jewellery chain Lovisa. He was due to serve out a 12-month notice period with Premier. No longer. In terms of the leaked documents, they show that all the brands within Premier, Portman's, Just Jeans, Dotty, JJ's and Jackie E, have suffered negative sales growth this year.
Ooh, ouch. Now, I mentioned this one at the top of the show, Sean. If you want to be a politician, then either train as a lawyer or become a party staffer, according to a new report into the backgrounds of federal parliamentarians.
Politicians with white-collar backgrounds dominate Parliament, with lawyers and barristers comprising about 1 in 5 MPs in federal Labor, Greens, National and Liberal parties. That's in the current Parliament. Managers and consultants also do pretty well. Former political staffers dominate the ranks of politicians sitting in the House of Representatives and Senate. More than half of Labor MPs worked as staffers before getting pre-selected, while the makeup is about 1/3 for the Liberal Party, 20% for the Nationals, according to a report in the Fin. The report from think tank Per Capita says the number of lawyers and barristers is up 15% from or compared to the previous Scott Morrison government. Worth noting here, Anthony Albanese is very typical of a Labor politician, a New South Wales government research officer, then a staffer, then into federal politics. The Liberal Party's Peter Dutton is not. He, of course, was a police officer.
All right, turning to international news now, and the surge in support for Kamala Harris has faded, a new poll suggests, leaving Donald Trump ahead in the run-up to what may be the only televised debate between the candidates scheduled for tomorrow, Australian time.
For the first time in a month, Mr. Trump is narrowly ahead with 48 to 47% support nationwide among those likely to vote, according to the New York Times Siena College poll. It also shows that nearly a third of Americans felt that they needed to learn more about Ms. Harris and where she stands on the issues that matter to voters. Only 9% felt that way about Trump, according to a report in the Times. It just shows people know what Donald Trump thinks. They're not so sure about what Kamala Harris thinks. A survey by CBS News of voters in 3 swing states show Harris ahead by a single point in Michigan and Wisconsin, tied with Trump in Pennsylvania. A YouGov poll last week commissioned by the Times put Harris ahead in 4 swing states, Trump in 3. It just shows how very, very tight this election is going to be. And of course, less than 8 weeks till voting day.
I can't wait for the debate.
Yeah, it's going to be fantastic.
Oh, especially after last one, which feels like such a long time ago now, the Trump-Biden debate. So much has happened since then. I'm actually really excited about this one.
Yeah, it's about lunchtime tomorrow.
Oh, I shall be watching. Up next, Fear and Greed Daily interview, Kate Dundas, Executive Director of the UN Global Compact Network Australia.
Yeah, it's about where business, as you put it, Michael, it's about where business meets the United Nations climate change goals, where they coincide, work together, and where they don't.
Yeah, indeed. It is up next in the Fear and Greed playlist on your podcast platform or at fearandgreed.com.au. And keep an eye on your playlist as well at around about midday. I say around about midday, it's exactly midday. A new bonus episode of Ask Fear and Greed goes live. This is the bonus episode where we take listener questions. Really, I take the questions and then put them to you, Sean. And so far, I reckon we've got a 100% success rate in answering questions that have been put to us.
Well, answering them, did we answer them well? I'm not sure about 100% in terms of answering them well.
I didn't say that. I wasn't discussing quality here. I was just saying, did we answer it? Yes.
Uh-huh.
There's nothing more to that. But if you have a question that you would like us to answer, today's question's a great one. It's about all the companies leaving the ASX and kind of who's kind of coming in to replace them. It's a fantastic one. If you have a question, it can be anything about business or economics or anything, really. We answered one while you were away, Sean, about kind of the right to disconnect and whether you're better to have those conversations in a big group environment or one-on-one. And Adam Lang, our colleague, was in his element answering that question.
Oh, he'd love it. He'd love all that. I mean, he loves workplace relations anyway.
Yeah.
And he's run big workforces. So I'm sure whatever he said was very, very sensible.
Yeah, that was one Ask Fear and Greed that I think we actually answered well. Not saying that we don't answer them well with you. Oh, golly, put my foot in it there, didn't I?
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, sorry.
No, that's all right. I think Adam would have done a great job.
Yeah, he did. Keep an eye on the playlist. It's coming out at midday. Hopefully I'll be less awkward then. Thank you very much, Sean.
Thank you, Michael.
It's Tuesday, the 10th of September, 2024. Make sure you're following the podcast and please join us online on LinkedIn, Instagram, X, TikTok and Facebook. I'm Michael Thompson and that was Fear and Greed. Have a great day.